Good morning. It is Wednesday, November the 7th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Celebrate. It is time to celebrate. With the elections were yesterday. One of the things I want to celebrate, it just occurred to me, is celebrate that the election is over, if nothing else. Yay! We had our election. We had record turnouts. Yay for us, and yay that we don't have to put up with any more of this, the political pressures associated with an election for another year and a half or 2 years. Yay. Celebrate. Beyond that, everybody today has something to celebrate. The left has the ability to celebrate taking the House, the Republicans consolidating the gains that they made in 2016 in the Senate. They've increased their lead in the Senate to, at this particular point, 54-46 as it stands right now. So celebrate. Too often Republicans are put on the defensive by Democrats, by the left, that wants to rain on Republican parades. They want to spoil your party. They want to spoil your good mood. They want you to be demoralized and dispirited, and so they will go on the attack, as I'm sure they probably are as we speak. The Democrats are probably on the attack in various ways, shapes, or forms to try to spoil the Republican good mood or the Republican Party, spoil the party. So don't let them do it. Okay, you're going to hear Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity. They always succumb to that trap. But then again, they're reactionaries. The vast majority of people in the United States of America today that call themselves conservatives are not conservative at all. They are reactionaries. They simply react to whatever it is that the Democrats do. There's going to be a little bit more on this later in my next segment. But celebrate. Take the time out to celebrate, at least today. Okay, if you want to analyze what the Democrats did or didn't do and what they're likely to do with the House or whatever, fine. But do it tomorrow. Or better yet, do it on Friday. Or maybe even best, do it next week. Start on that Monday. But celebrate as long as you possibly can. Okay? This has been a rather grueling election cycle, and it has been very intense over the past few months. The nomination of Judge Kavanaugh to become Justice of the Supreme Court was grueling for everybody, for every man, woman, and child in this country. And then we have the midterm elections, and it was grueling. Take the time to celebrate. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to have a good time with this. I'm not even going to think about the House today. All I want to think about is the Senate. As a matter of fact, as I looked at a few minutes ago, there's still, I think, one or two races that haven't been called yet. I think the one in Arizona hasn't been called yet, and it's very, very close. But anyways, the point is that even, without that, there's reason to celebrate. And I need to celebrate because I need to know that all the crap that I've been through over the past few weeks has been worth it. And that's the only way I can do that. It's the only way I can say, yes, it's worth it. Yes, it was crappy, but damn it, it was worth it. And I do that by celebrating the victory, and you should too. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the 10 books that every conservative must read. Thank you very much, and welcome back. And the book that I'm about to read from is by Benjamin Weicker, and it is 10 books that conservatives must read. Benjamin Weicker is the author of the book that 10 books that screwed up the world and 5 that didn't help. So, screwed up the world is hyperbole, but the point is there are 10 books that are by authors that have influence in today's culture, and what they're proposing were wrong. So here's what his suggestion is. Instead of reading those 10 other books, here are the books that he thinks that you should read. So we'll start with part 1. Just what exactly is conservatism? This book about books is divided into 4 main parts, according to 4 important themes. The first, concerning the nature of conservatism itself. The second, focusing on the American founding. The third, dealing with economics. And the last, pressing home the importance of forming the conservative imagination. That we should need any discussion of just exactly what conservatism really is might strike us as odd. Surely conservatives already know what it means to be conservative, otherwise they wouldn't be conservatives. And he's wrong here. The fact is that most conservatives are conservative because the left tells them they are. The left has gone ahead and rigged the playing field. The left has said, you're a conservative if you're in opposition to these things. If you're anti-abortion, you're conservative. If you don't like the EPA, you're a conservative. Okay, so the left has defined what it is to be left and right in this country. So conservatives just basically go along with the program, unfortunately. I think there is a kind of negative clarity among conservatives. That is, conservatives are clear about what conservatism is not. Big government, socialism, high taxes, gay marriage. And so when they try to explain what conservatism is, they define it negatively, as in freedom from governmental niggling and nannying. But a negative definition is a rather difficult starting point to form a positive account that conservatives can live by and defend. Part of the problem in getting that definition is caused by the very word conservative. The word conservative is, by itself, a word without much substance. To say that one is conservative doesn't really say much at all, because the real question is, what is one trying to conserve? And moreover, why is it really worth conserving? We've always done it this way is not an argument, because change is always bad, is a dangerous argument. So let's try that again. And moreover, why is it really worth conserving? Quote, we've always done it this way, unquote, is not an argument. Quote, because change is always bad, unquote, is a dangerous argument. Of course, the answer to that question is you make the presumption for the status quo. And why? Because it's impossible to prove a negative. Nor can we merely reduce conservatism to the defense of what is, quote, traditional, unquote, a point that will become obvious by illustration. The Aztec Empire spanned roughly the time period from the early 1300s to the early 1500s, about as long as the United States has been around. The Aztecs were culturally rich, powerful, brutal, and infamous for practicing human sacrifice. The practice of human sacrifice is much older and more widespread in the Mesoamerican region. By incorporating it into their culture as well, the Aztecs were being quite conservative. They could point to the practice as traditional, as having been performed dutifully by their fathers, leading back into the mists of time. And it was not just a matter of tradition, of maintaining a long-standing human custom. Since the Aztecs believed that the gods sustained the universe and that the gods themselves were placated by human sacrifice, they had profound religious reasons for defending the practice against innovators. Moreover, they didn't just believe that gods were bloodthirsty. Human sacrifice atoned for real moral sins. We may not approve of this method of atonement, but we can have little doubt they experienced guilt for actual moral wrongs they felt needed expiation. The point is fairly simple. Every society that has lasted for at least 2 or 3 centuries has long-standing, hallowed traditions, passed on with great solemnity from generation to generation. Whatever these traditions are or were, and whatever their moral caliber, the maintenance of them against innovators would be the task of that society's conservatives. If conservatism is merely the doctrine that what has been done for a long time must be preserved and defended because it has been done a long time, then conservatism means very little. To say the least, it would make a hash of American conservatism, which did away with the traditional arrangement of kings and nobles ruling the common folk. Yes, that having been duly noted, conservatives can add some substance to the definition of conservatism by pointing to America's founding fathers. But here's the rub. Appealing to the founders no longer has much cultural weight outside conservative circles. The age's simple appeal to the Founding Fathers is gone. For a variety of reasons, their venerable status has been almost entirely eroded. As a consequence, it is no longer politically compelling either to state or prove that, quote, the Founding Fathers said this, unquote, or, quote, the Constitution clearly states that, unquote. For better or for worse, we live in an age when the wisdom of the Founders cannot be taken for granted as common coin, but must be set forth again, argued for once more, and made compelling to a new age. But precisely here, conservatives should see the problem of merely reducing conservatism to those principles of American founders. Surely conservatism is something deeper and older. Surely it rests on even more venerable and firm foundations. Or, to put it another way, if the American founders were conservative, certainly they weren't just making things up on the spot, but were themselves conserving a deeper and older wisdom, a perennial wisdom that isn't peculiar to America, but deeply rooted in the nature of human beings. That is what we're trying to recover in part one. We're trying to get to the very deepest roots of what conservatism really is. In doing so, we will find that conservatism is not merely an American thing. We will read an ancient Greek philosopher, a late Victorian English journalist, and a 20th century German-born political philosopher, and a 20th century Irish-born Christian apologist. Rather, conservatism is a fundamental way of understanding human nature and its place in the cosmos. We'll also find out that liberalism is not some recent phenomenon, but is nearly as old as conservatism. Samuel Johnson famously quipped that the devil was the first Whig, the Whigs being British liberals. I'm not out to demonize liberalism, however, but to use it to clarify what conservatism is, for the two exist in essential antagonism. Liberalism, too, at its core is a fundamental way of understanding human nature and its place in the cosmos. It is not just a surface reaction to conservatism, but a deep rebellion against the conservative account of man. The works we'll be considering in part one will go a long way in clarifying what conservatism is through an analysis of its opposite, liberalism. This kind of deep clarification is needed for another reason. Readers who are at all familiar with the 14 books I've chosen for treatment as genuinely conservative will know that more than one of those 14 authors would shudder, were they alive today, at being called conservative. In fact, they would demand to be called liberal. Yet even a quick analysis of their arguments shows them aligning, for the most part, with today's conservatives. This confusing situation is illuminated somewhat by remembering that the American Founding Fathers were indeed engaging in a revolution against the mother country and her king, and that the term Republican was, a century before our founding, a term for radicals in English politics bent on decapitating kings and putting political power into popular hands. In Europe, conservatism was associated with those who wanted to keep or restore the old regime where hereditary kings and queens, with the help of an entrenched aristocracy, ruled nations. From the European perspective, Americans looked like radicals, but Americans believed they were reinstituting the most natural and moral form of government, self-government. The habits and principles of self-government, including economic self-government, could therefore rightly be considered conservative insofar as they conserve what is most natural and moral. But by the 19th century, the anti-statist position, whether in Europe or America, came to be known as liberalism, since it sought liberation from top-down governmental control. Contemporary American conservatism is sometimes seen as having its genesis from this classical liberalism, the old anti-statist liberalism that focused on laissez-faire economics, personal liberty, and republican institutions. But for reasons that will soon become apparent, this isn't a satisfactory solution, because there exists a classical conservatism, far deeper and older, that is the home, the foundation of true conservatism, the sure fixing point of the conservative mind. Our chosen books will help us find it. So, basically, I already, have dealt with this issue in terms of what is conservative or what isn't, in terms of the definition, the essential part of what makes a person conservative or socialist instead of liberal. I think that's a better way of putting it. Or is because conservatism is realistic. Liberalism/socialism is idealistic. And the difference between the two is that one makes the presumption for the status quo, changing only when there's an obvious reason to do so, and the other one makes the presumption for change, only maintaining the status quo when they absolutely have to. So those are the two differences there. And again, if you're going to make the presumption for change, that's the power in that is in then asking people, and this is the way the left in this country always makes changes, is by daring your opponents to prove a negative. Proving a negative is impossible. Let me say it again. Proving a negative is impossible. You cannot prove a negative. And so if you are baited into that position and you're trying to prove the negative, you're going to lose the argument. There's no doubt about it. The battle is in shaping the argument to go the way it should go, which is prove the positive. If you want change, then you need to prove to me that change is necessary, and then prove to me that the kind of change you're looking for is the best kind of all the different options. So, and with that brings us to the conclusion of yet another episode of The Drill, and I thank you very much for listening, and until next time, have a great day.